My guest today, Annabel Jeffcoate, is a coach who aims to help teachers achieve a life-work balance, something that I really, really love. So Annabel herself experienced stage 5 burnout when she was in her early 20s. And she reached a point during lockdown where she had a choice. She could dive back into her fitness studio, or she could follow her heart and start her business, Balance for Teachers, to help teachers who had been pouring everything they had into helping their pupils during such challenging times. So, Annabel's vision is to reduce stress related illness in the education sector. And so, she's here today ready to share tips on saying no and doing so without feeling the guilt. I personally found this conversation really valuable and I learned some things as well. So, I'm really hoping that it does the same for you. Annabel, welcome to the Teachers Podcast.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So we're going to talk about something that I'm really passionate about today. So let's just get straight to it. So your business is Balance for Teachers, and your business aims to establish a life-work balance for teachers. Now, I know you said work-life balance, but my thing is, life-work balance, because life is so important. And one of your strategies is about saying no. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so Balance for Teachers, our intention and goal is to help teachers to reduce anxiety and switch off, right? So when I was just listening and hearing what teachers were saying to me, a lot of them was like, I always feel anxious, I'm laying at bed at night overthinking, I feel so overwhelmed, and you've probably heard all of these words quite often. So our intention is to reduce stress-related illness in the education sector. And one of the ways that we look into doing this is the strategy through saying no. Because as much as we want to be calm and present, if we don't gift ourselves the space to do that, we won't get that opportunity to feel calm and present. So it's about letting go of asking for permission all the time from our external environment and going back to, okay, who am I? What do I want? Where do I want to go? So that we know what we're going to say yes to and what we're going to say no to. Because there's only so you can't say yes to everything in the world, can we? And it's like, what are the things are we spending our time on? Because time is valuable, especially for a teacher. It's really valuable that you focus your intentions to be able to show up fully in front of your class. So Balance for Teachers, it's all about really understanding and learning to listen to yourself. When I work with teachers, I love it when they come back to me and they go, oh, I said no today. And it just sounds like a little kid that's gone, I found this new word. But it's because it can feel challenging, but it is possible when you learn to listen to yourself.
Oh, I love that. What I really picked up on there was when you're talking about permission and giving yourself permission. And that's something that I'm working with both of my coaches on at the moment, just giving myself permission. And I do wonder a lot of the time, what is it that I actually brought from teaching? You know, we've all got traits in ourselves, haven't we? But I do see, especially because I went into teaching quite young, it kind of shapes a lot of who you are as a young adult, I think, in the mindset that you develop and what you see other teachers do as well. So I think that's such an important thing, giving yourself permission and being okay with giving yourself permission, because sometimes I think, I need to give myself permission, but I don't feel like I deserve it, or I think, well, why should I have that when I don't see other teachers might have that? But you've got to come from a place of deserving, which is really hard to do.
Definitely, I hear like there is a pattern that I hear from teachers in terms of the story of I'm not good enough, right? So it comes from that underlying story of, I'm not good enough as a teacher, and the description of what they believe or perceive a teacher should look like. So definitely when you're young as a teacher, as you said, it sculpts you because you're looking around, and we won't go too deep into the mindset of this on this podcast because it will probably go on for hours, I'm sure. But we have layers to our conscious mind, right? So we have our conscious mind, our subconscious, and our unconscious mind. And as we go around our day-to-day basis, we create pictures in the world around us, and we see the world as from the position that we are in. So if we're going in and we're going, like all the teachers I see are working all the time, if I'm going to be a good teacher, I have to work all the time. Now, you don't know that they're not like working till 6, switching off. They don't have kids, they have no other responsibilities. They might be just going home, putting their feet up, coming back the next day, right? There'll be other people that have hobbies. They might not have children, but they might be caring for older parents, or maybe they're moving house and they've got life events. So we don't see the whole picture of someone else's life. The only thing we see is what we perceive in that moment. As an ECT or NQT, you tend to find that we go in and we're working with experienced teachers that are mentoring us, right? So we go, oh, they just know everything, right? They know it all. Like they can do it. They show up and the class is quiet and they behave themselves. And we set this expectation that I should be like that, right? You shouldn't be anything. You could be like that. One day you could be, and that's why language is really powerful. A lot of teachers, I hear them say, I should be doing this. I should have done all my marking. I should have done X, Y, Z. Well, no, you could have, but you chose differently in that moment, and guess what? You can choose differently again. So a lot of people, as you were saying there, Claire, a lot of people come into the education sector, look around and go, everyone knows what they're doing, right? It's not necessarily in education, it's anywhere. You start anywhere new and you feel like, oh, I don't know anything. Am I good enough? I think a teacher should look this way. And then we put this expectation of how we should look and we try and meet it and we beat ourselves up if we don't. And it's like, oh, I see that everyone's saying yes to everything. That might not be true, right? They might have just said no to something, but you weren't in the room. So it's about, instead of looking externally and going, this is the picture I see, it's going, okay, where do I stand? And what kind of teacher would I like to be? Like, you can take influence and inspiration from others for sure. That's how we learn and grow, but we don't necessarily have to be the same as. We just get to go, I was inspired by a teacher when I was growing up. Maybe it's because they listened to me. I'm going to make sure I make time to listen to the children and hear what they're saying, right? So it's about going through your experience, no matter how long you have, and then just tapping into other people's experience by being curious. Asking the questions. It looks to me like you're always working. Is that true? And they'll probably go, no. Right? Or I've got this amazing hack that I can show you on how I save time. So curiosity breaks down that barrier.
I think a lot of it is about perception as well. And I was writing some content this morning actually around when I moved from secondary into primary school. I worked with an NQT, and then there was some senior leaders in the school, and there was this kind of culture of like glamorizing overworking as well. And I remember they used to get the NQT to stay with them, and she'd stay in school till like 8 o'clock at night, and then they'd pull an all-nighter because they had keys, and it was supposed to be this amazing thing. And I used to turn up the next day and think, how is is this possible? How is this happening? But just the culture that NQT was then in was really unhelpful at the beginning. And I suppose, the perception might be that they worked really hard, but I don't think they did. It's not that they didn't work hard, but a lot of that time they couldn't be productive. How is that even possible?
Get that. And I think it's very tricky because there's not necessarily like a criteria in education in terms of when you're mentoring what is the ideal, because everyone's unique and every school is slightly different. You have academies, you have different versions of schools nowadays. So it's looking at it and coming back to yourself. And yes, that teacher as an NQT will be going in quite vulnerable. And it might be, unfortunately, that they have to go through that experience to realize it's not what they want, right? The power lies in learning in what you don't want. So sometimes I hear people say, oh, I just feel stuck, right? I just feel stuck. The school's culture is all about working every hour. And if I haven't got my criteria for my classes or my lesson plans for my classes back by Friday, then I get it in the neck, right? Now, that's the point we get to take a breath and go, well, is this the right school for me? Because there are people out there that can work around the clock. They don't necessarily have high stress levels or an inability in their physical body to reduce stress. They may not have life events going on. So it's about finding the harmony that works for you. And I've worked with teachers who, during working with me, we've swapped schools, right? And all I've done is coach them. I never made the choice for them. I just coached them and sat back and listened. And they went, oh, I just don't like where I am. And I just got curious and went, okay, what specifically don't you like about where you're at? And I say this to people that are looking to leave teaching as well. What is it specifically? If you are specific, you can then create a solution to solve that problem. If you just say, I don't like it, it's like a child coming up to you and going, I don't like it. And you're going, okay, what am I going to do with that? Right? I can't move you forward. Whereas when you say to yourself, okay, I don't like this situation, what specifically is triggering me to feel anxious? And then you look at, okay, is there a solution where I can stay where I'm at? Can I talk to someone? Can I find an opportunity to solve this problem where I'm at? If it's a deep rooted culture, like you cannot change that mentor that was pulling that NQT in, right? And that NQT probably just had to ride her time during that stage, but she would have learned not to choose a school that did that, right? Hopefully, fingers crossed. So what we've got to do is then go, okay, well, I don't like this, and actually the culture and the core values and the purpose of this school and the leaders does not align with me. There are hundreds of schools out there that are doing it right. There are hundreds of like head teachers, senior leaders that are inspiring their team, and they're saying, do you know what, I don't work weekends. I saw a post on LinkedIn from a headmistress and went, I don't work weekends, haven't worked weekends for years, and I actually have a go at my staff if they work weekends, right? Well, to a point. She says if you want to do it, you can, but there's no expectation for you to do it because you don't want to take someone's power away either if they choose to work at a weekend. So I think it, like you said, it comes down to looking around you and going, is it for me or is it not for me? And that's the point you need to learn. Like, do I need to say no to this school?
Yeah, I love that how you're bringing it back to saying no. So why is it important then for teachers to find a way to say no more often?
So in our bodies, we have something called allostatic overload. Now, I'm not going to get super sciencey today. We'll keep it kind of, mainly work on mindset to begin with. But our body's system, nervous system, has its capacity, right? There is a capacity that we get to, and that's it. And that's when we can start leading into burnout, stress-related illnesses, getting sick. And guess what? If teachers get sick, we've had it through the pandemic, having to isolate and things like that, then the kids don't have a teacher. They don't have consistency. I'm very much a person that monitors the stats in education because of our vision on balance for teachers. We want to reduce stress-related illness, so we want to be looking at it and going, is that number going down? And the Teacher Wellbeing Index is one of the, from Education Support UK, is one of the things that I always read when they release it. So they didn't release it through the pandemic, but they did in 2021. They did the update, and it was 70% of teachers that were literally at breaking point. And I'll get the stats for you because it's drawn from my mind right now. It was 70% that said their workload was the main reason that they were looking to leave teaching. And 80% was senior leaders, right? That's huge, right? And I think it was like 54% of teachers in the last 2 years considered leaving, right? And that wasn't necessarily due to workload. They just were like, I can't do this. Now, we can shout and scream as much as we want, but for me, it's like, how can I serve one person at a time in education? And I get these messages come back to me saying, the best one was from the classroom where one of the teachers came back to me and she went, my class are correcting me. They said I sounded too negative and that I needed to find a solution. And I was like, amazing. And I had another teacher that worked in a special needs school, and one of the children was very much very defiant, right? And she would retaliate or get very angry. And she just walked up to her and said, Miss, I'm feeling very angry today. I don't necessarily want to read yet. Can I just go and have some space for me? And she was like, sure, right? And she went off, had some space, came back less than 10 minutes later, sat down and read a book. And she came back to me and went, do you know what? The reason why she did that is because since working with you, every morning I come in and I let the class know how I feel. and I make an agreement with them that, if I'm having a bit of a rough morning, can we work together in order to get through this class? And she just mimicked, right? So learning how to say no is saving your capacity so you don't burn out. It's teaching the next generation how to say no so that they realize that you don't have to say yes to everything and that you can have time for yourself and it's allowed and you're okay to switch off. And they mimic that, they learn that, and they realize that actually it's okay to listen to myself. And then kind of for me as well, it's that ability to learn to say no, to look after your health, to look after the next generation's health, and really change that education sector so that we have the consistency in education and not like getting supply teachers in or swapping over and sort of affecting that education and that safety feeling, not only for the children but for the teachers. Because as a teacher, you don't want to be thinking, am I going to be sick next week? I read a post yesterday actually from a teacher that kept losing her voice. And she's like, it's not my fault, it keeps going, but I can't do my job. So she's constantly fearing, am I going to lose my voice again? Right? And you don't want to be like, oh, am I going to burn out again? Am I going to have a situation where I just can't show up for class and I can't do what I'm passionate about? So it's really coming back to that importance of saying no, not just for others, but for yourself. Because it even comes down to saying no to your own to-do list, right? I love have you ever said this one, Claire? I'll just do one more thing.
Oh, yeah. and often you don't even do that extra thing. You just look at your list and half do some of the things that are not useful.
Yeah, right? And there's deeper reasons we're doing that. So it's not just about saying no to the external environment if it doesn't align for you. It's also saying no to that part of you that might be trying to control. It might be trying to like tick the boxes, make yourself feel like you've achieved something by getting through this massive A4 list of things to do, which is impossible, will never happen, right? So it's about saying, okay, no, I'm not going to stay late at work tonight. I'm going to go home. That's my boundary, right? So it's not just about externally saying no, it's also about listening to yourself and saying no when you are doing it to yourself. And I get how frustrating it is, because I remember when I was burnt out and I had a phone call with my mother actually, and she said, Annabel, you're at war with yourself, when I was like really burning out. And I was so annoyed. I was like, I'm not doing it to myself, right? I'm not doing it to myself. And I look back now and go, at any point I could have said no and chose not to.
It's so hard to see though. It's so hard to see when you're really in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we have this, as teachers, we have this addiction, I think, sometimes to our to-do list, thinking that we're helping our future self. But it kind of never even pans out. Like I used to laminate, which I would never do now because I wasn't, it wasn't as much of a, oh, this is really bad for the environment then. But I never used them again because I'd move school, I'd move class, the kids would wreck them, I'd find a mistake on it. So I would never use it again. So it didn't help my future self. But in my mind, I was like, if I just do this now, I'm helping my future self. So that when it comes to the holidays, I can have a break. Or, the weekend, I don't have to work. But I get there and I go, oh, well, I'll help my future self again.
Yeah. It's that so what I hear a lot from teachers is I want to be able to be present and calm. Like I want to be able to sit with my family and really enjoy it. I want to be able to put my phone down, get off, leave my laptop at work. I love that one. I have a fantastic teacher I've been working with for about 6 months, and when she came to me, she worked every evening and every weekend. And a couple of weeks ago she said to me, she went, I tried to bring my laptop home and I couldn't. And she was like, it just felt weird, right? So we'd worked together to gradually get her to that point. And I think a lot of people think, I'm just going to have a work-life balance, right? It's just going to happen. And we have to remember that there is a part of us that is used to what we're doing now. So as you were saying a moment, in the moment it's hard because, you wouldn't expect if you put a SATs paper, for example, in front of a child but never taught them any of it, like they probably have a complete meltdown. Or they would just walk away and ignore it. or they'd scream and shout, all reactions because they don't know what's coming. We prepare children for what's coming, and we never really think about preparing ourselves. So saying, okay, well, I want to say no more. Great. So what is part of you afraid of? Right? What part of you is saying yes? Is it because you want to please people because you don't want them to dislike you? Is it because you're worried that you'll lose your job? Is it because, like, there's a multitude of reasons. And one of her reasons was, I have to bring my laptop home because I won't be able to keep up. And if I keep up, I might lose my job. If I don't keep up, rather, I might lose my job. And it's going, okay, well then how do we show you that even if you don't work 2 nights in a week and the weekend, that actually you're more productive? So we did it gradually, and guess what? She's become more productive because she doesn't have brain fog. She's not overwhelmed, so her nervous system isn't overloaded, right? She isn't in a position where she's making mistakes all the time. And she's getting rid of the stuff that's not necessary and having an incredible weekend being present with her family. I had a great message from her going, I've just literally spontaneously gone and bought a cookie, sat by the river, didn't have my phone, and spent 2 hours there doing nothing. And I don't feel guilty. And I was like, yes! I can't even explain, Claire. When I get messages like that, I'm literally jumping up and down with like a yes, right? Because for me personally, having been through that and taking 10 years to recover, like, I don't want anyone in this generation or the next generation to have to go through that because it's not necessary. You shouldn't need to.
Yeah. And I think, the key thing that you're saying is about it being gradual. Mm-hmm. And I completely agree with that. It doesn't help to have some sweeping gesture. And this is why sometimes I think as well, it's hard for leaders, because if leaders could take some massive thing away, sometimes it gets filled by other things, not from the leader's perspective, but perhaps from a teacher's perspective, because we're not prepared for that change. And so I absolutely agree, and that's something I've learned as a leader in education, that a big sweeping gesture is not helpful, that it has to be these small steps that we prepare for and then action. And it's almost like, I suppose it's like blowing a balloon up very slowly. You've just got to kind of like find a place for the air, and then you add a bit more air and you find a place for that, and it's very difficult to go from one thing to another that's very, very different in a short space of time.
It's very challenging for leaders because what we tend to do is we look to people to save us. So when I was very much in that burnout, I got my attention from being a victim. Right, I got my attention from, so my burnout got to the extreme of seizures. So I would have seizures, my body would shut down from the anxiety. Glad to say I've been seizure free for over 7 years now. So no medication or anything like that, just lifestyle changes, work-life balance. And what we get to appreciate is that when we look for people to save us, we make ourselves powerless. Right? And teaching already, as a teacher, not necessarily as a senior leader, as a teacher, it runs with like the NHS profession and things like that. People like helping professions, they tend to have the most stress-related illness because they feel powerless. And my role is to help people to take their power back, whether it's through language, whether it's through listening to yourself, and actually stand in your own to feel calm and present and make choices for yourself. Now, as senior leaders, if you've got someone who, I don't know, had an experience when they were younger and it locked in with them that they had to do more in order to be seen, and you go in and say, well, you don't need to do any of that, they're going to want to do it, right? Because it's so ingrained in them, which is why I haven't gone straight into schools and I'm going to go and do a workshop. One, I don't want to waste 2 hours of your time, right? Because you're not going to take that all in, and it's going to be a gradual change. It's more about saying, okay, how do we inspire the teachers to choose differently by setting the example? So if you are having a work-life balance as a leader and they see that it's possible and that actually you're not going to have a go at them for doing that, then they'll start to shift. I've worked with a lot of teachers that have had negative experiences of leaders where they've been bullied basically within the school. So they've then gone to a new school. Now, if we want to coach people into a new behavioural pattern, what we have to do is repetition, authority, and impact. In other words, that teacher has to time and time again take an evening off and not get moaned at. And then they start to realize, like, oh, I actually feel better. Impact. Yeah. And then over time they go, okay. And the authority is when they're coming in and they're going, oh, the kids are still learning. I'm still getting praise. I'm still getting all of these things happen, and the world hasn't caved in. Now, sometimes impact, repetition, authority is sudden because it's quite dramatic and it causes an immediate change. Sometimes that does happen. But most often, it's when you have a team of teachers and you're praising. It's a bit like a classroom, really. It's nothing new, but we haven't related it from the classroom into the school, like staff room per se. So I see so many things on behaviour management where people are talking about saying, okay, there is a good child, pay attention to the child doing the right thing, don't give attention to the child kicking off, right? Same thing, right? Don't give attention to the person who is doing excessive amounts of work and pushing themselves to breaking point. Give attention to the person who is balancing their work and still getting results. So they're doing 7 out of 10 and not 11 out of 10, if that makes sense. And it's getting that culture by understanding the purpose of the school and understanding that there is a culture of work-life balance, and the people that want that will be drawn to the school.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's something that we've even been looking at Classroom Secrets as well, because what can happen is obviously we employ a number of ex-teachers, and things have happened in different schools that people have been in, and there's kind of an acceptance, and we talk about how we're all bringing things from schools into Classroom Secrets, even though it's it's definitely not anything like school. And something that we're even working on right now is demonstrating how we're looking after our life-work balance. Things like when you were in school, it was really hard to do different instead of more, because it was just like, oh, here's an extra thing. And so we can say, let's do different, not more. But unless we're giving examples, and I actually give examples in the newsletter at Classroom Secrets around, listen, this thing I'm doing is different, not more. Because it's important that you see that I'm also doing that, so that it's safe. It feels safe for us to do that.
Yeah, because as humans we want to fit in, right? Even from birth, we are trying to please, we are trying to survive, because you need to, if you watch a 2-year-old child, right? If the room gets tense, they will do something cute, right? They will try and get rid of the room's dynamic, because they don't want to be lost or rejected or pushed away, because they need food to survive and they need that support, right? So as we get older, we still want to fit in, but there is a fine balance between fitting in and being authentic. So, for example, if you go to a school and it doesn't align with your purpose and core values, and you are trying to fit in by being something you're not, like working all the hours of the day, but your body's going, please let me rest, right? There are people out there that can work long hours and their bodies will do it. And there are people out there who won't be able to. I often hear female teachers going through menopause, going through different changes in their body, even the normal monthly cycle for females. Some weeks in the month, they don't necessarily have as much capacity as other weeks in the month. Some women don't have any problem at all. They have cycles quite easily, and they go straight through it, right? Some people at the other end of menopause, some people in perimenopause, and there are guys out there that also have concerns hormonally and have concerns with depression and anxiety and things. So I think it's really coming back to that idea of listening to yourself and making sure that you align with what the culture is. So I always say to people, when you go to an interview, they're not interviewing you, you are interviewing them. You're going into that interview thinking, is this a school I want to work in? Is this a leader I want to work for? Do we align? Because if you don't work there, right? It's not going to benefit them and it's not going to benefit you.
Yeah. We talk about this in business a lot. It's all about having the right fit, and schools are the same, and there's a lot more choice as well. So it's important to flex that. Okay, so you're a teacher and you're listening and you're thinking, wow, this is really interesting. I can change things in my life with balance. What actionable steps can you give a teacher that they could implement now that would help?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the biggest thing is taking time out, and listening to yourself in terms of where you're at right now. And the good thing is you can always change this, right? So we talk about it when we run businesses and things like that, and I'm sure you do a lot of this, Claire, as well, is sitting back and going, why am I here? Right? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And it's a deep question. It's not something that's going to just rise up for you straight away. And guess what? You can change it, right? If you go, well, actually, no, it's this. Now, the reason reducing stress-related illness is important to me is because on my journey, I experienced it, and I don't want, in my heart of hearts, don't want anyone else to feel the way I felt. Right? I don't want people dragging themselves out of bed. I don't want people in a position where they're crying silently because they literally have no energy to cry. Right? I remember sitting there and just tears running down. I was like, I don't even know if I can get up. Like having that isolation feeling, depression, being in a situation where life just, you feel like you're existing and you're not actually living. Right? It's horrific. When I was having seizures, I didn't have control over my own body. So it's like, I don't want people to go through that situation. It's not necessary. What you have to do is step back, listen to yourself and say, okay, why am I here? What is my purpose? Now, originally in my previous chapter before Balance for Teachers, it was about empowering women to live confidently, because I had a really bad breakup that caused a lot of catastrophic drama. And I was like, I don't want any other female to go through that. And then I created a business around that. And then I was like, well, actually, I don't feel it's refined enough, because I don't want to just work with women. And I don't want to just put it down into that. And I realized over the lockdown that actually I wanted to reach more people. I wanted to serve the next generation as well. And I didn't want anyone to get burnout or experience any stress-related illness. So then Balance for Teachers was born. So it's okay if your purpose is, you know what? And I've worked with teachers and they've said, you know what? I want people to know that I care. Right? I've got another teacher, she's fantastic. She wants people to find their voice. Right? She struggled to find her voice for years. She eventually found her voice, and she was like, I want to help others find their voice. So she listens to people. And that's her purpose. Every day she shows up and tries to listen. And I think when you have your purpose, you can then look at your core values. Why am I here? And how am I going to achieve that? So your core values are, how am I actually going to achieve that? So how am I showing up? For her, it was, I'm going to show up and listen first, and then I'll answer. So it's that idea of, number one, looking at your purpose and core values, and then being curious, right? Saying no to me sounds like a child that's having a tantrum, right? No, not doing it. No. Now, we're not in that world. We're working in teams now, right? So what we get to say is, instead of saying no, and if you pop on my Instagram account, I have an infographic that explains all this. I'm sure we'll go through all that and we'll send you that way. So it's Balance for Teachers. And what we're looking at is when someone comes to you and they say, could you just, I don't know, I've had an example before of, could you just help the NQT mark her books? And this teacher was like, I really don't want to do that. Right? I haven't got time, right? So what I always say to people, if someone jumps at you with, can you do this? That is a request, not a demand, right? Take a breath, walk away, have a think. Does it align? Can you make it work? Now, if immediately you go, no, I'm not doing that, it doesn't align with my belief and core values, I'm not adding that additional workload, I can't stick to my boundaries, you might say, do you know what, listen to them first, I appreciate you want me to mark these books, however, it's not going to work in terms of my capacity right now. However, here's an idea, what if she marks them and I quickly review them? Right? I found a solution, it works for both of us. Now, it could be that it's a straight no, in which case you might point them in a direction of someone else. So you're breathing to go, does this work for me? If it does, okay. If not, make an agreement. You don't have to straight out say no. Same thing with your to-do list. right? You don't have to go, oh, I'm just not going to do that. You go, well, part of me wants to do it and part of me doesn't want to do it, right? I want to go to bed. Well, could I move this stuff to another time so I know it's going to get dealt with? Then I can go to sleep, right? So it's making agreements rather than saying, okay, I'm just going to say no and walk away, because that's probably not going to happen. So the only way you can make an agreement is understanding why is it part of me doesn't want to say no as well. So it does go that little bit deeper. So 1, know your purpose and core values. 2, be willing to make agreements with others. And if you're really feeling riled up about someone asking you something, then I would listen to yourself and what it means to you. What is the consequence? If you're going, I really don't want to say no because I'm worried I'm going to lose my job, then how are you going to support yourself so you don't feel like you're going to lose your job? And if you did lose your job, could you go and get another one? Right? It's answering the unknown in your mind to reduce the threat. So hopefully that's useful for the teachers and senior leaders that are listening.
That's super. Thank you so much. So where can we find out more about you? Where can we follow you?
So the website, which will have all of the social media on there, is www.worklifebalanceforteachers.com. We are on Instagram as Balance for Teachers. Twitter is Balance Teachers. You get the gist. And if you type in Balance for Teachers on Facebook, you'll also find us on Facebook. We have a 5-day free Discover Life Outside Work challenge. And the idea is for you to see if the way that I work works for you. For some people it does, for some people it doesn't. And, I'm a preacher of finding your alignment. And if it doesn't align, that's absolutely okay. But we run a 5-day free Discover Life Outside Work challenge. And the idea is to show you that in 15 minutes a day, you can discover a life outside work. We've had great results in just 5 days. So if you can spare yourself 15 minutes a day for 5 days, I've shared the link, I think, with yourself, Claire, so it can go in the bio. And anyone who wants to come on and just enjoy the 5 days, the idea is to change the education sector one teacher at a time. So every teacher that comes onto the challenge, we've had hundreds of teachers so far, and I get incredible results just in 5 days, and it just shows what's possible no matter what part of the education system you work in.
Yeah, I love that so much. Might have to do it myself, but we'll make sure that it's in the show notes. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks, Claire.